Portland, Oregon. It's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition again, with Portland Dispensaries examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Welcome to A Different View. I'm Jennifer here with Iva.
Hello,
how you doing tonight, Iva?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. There's been, so much bad news actually this last week, from my opinion. I'm hoping to see some more positive results out of it. I think that what we're seeing is the final throes of prohibition.
I think it's the final effort. I think, you throw everything that you've got left in your arsenal, see what sticks, and you kind of run with it. And they haven't found that yet, and I think that's frustrating, so they're turning up the ante. But, there's as much bad news as there's been. I have to say there's been a lot of good news, too. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that tonight as I fix my comb over.
Well, I think we're going to start off the show. We're going to look a little bit at that press conference yesterday from Idaho with Lindsay Reinhardt, the campaign manager for the Compassionate Idaho.
Yeah,
and we're also going to, hear all of those different speeches where you guys kind of talk about what's going on there.
Yeah, well, Russ and I made the trip to Boise. It's always easy when, because we have family, we always look for an opportunity to go back. But this was something that we felt very compelled to go and support. Lindsay Reinhardt, Sarah Caldwell, Compassionate Idaho, and Idaho Normal, Help Fest founders, chief petitioners for Compassionate Idaho. I don't know if for our listeners, they recently, the Boise Police Department came in and removed the children from their home, as, there were some allegations. We'll talk more about the details of that, but there was a press conference held on the, Capitol steps, very emotional, bring out your Kleenex, cause this will definitely stir, it'll stir up the activist juices in you, if you will. I certainly did that for me, so. Yeah, it'll be a good conversation. I hope some people will join in the conversation. But you're listening to A Different View. I'm Iva Cunningham. We've got Jennifer Alexander. We'll be right back.
Offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215. or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
And now we're back with A Different View.
So welcome back to A Different View. Are you there, Iva?
I am. I can hardly hear you, though. There we go. There you are.
There you go.
Working out the bugs still.
Still working out the quirks, yeah. So I did want to give a quick teaser because we're going to spend a little bit of time on this Idaho issue, and it's passionate for us both, so I think we'll really get wrapped up in it. But towards the end of our show, we're going to talk a little bit about the effort to repeal a portion of Washington's legalization bill, which I think is very important, and we definitely do want to touch on that. And then at the end of the show, we're going to wrap up with our Global Cannabis March, which happens every year. It's more and more, literally global. We have people in different countries, marching at the same time. Ours is going to happen this coming Saturday, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
It's a great opportunity to get out and introduce yourself to new activists, recharge your battery, celebrate, bind together, or bind, whatever, bond.
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 Sure. James Bond.
Together with other activists. 8 o'clock is so tiring for me on Tuesdays. I don't know. I hit the bricks. I hit the wall. Whatever. Anyway, so Russ has got a lot of. Do you have a video or?
Well, we have the audio from the press conference, and we're just going to fade in here about 5 minutes into it. I think it's about 3 minutes into Lindsay's speech because the first part was just kind of introductory. We'll see where we're at, and we can skip ahead and pause as you'd like.
Perfect.
And they are painful, and there's nothing I can do about them unless I choose to take a pharmaceutical drug. I have to cooperate fully with CPS. We are no longer having cannabis in our house. We are doing everything we can to get our children home, because nothing is more important than your children, which is why we've been fighting so hard in this state to make it safe for patients to have medical marijuana so that their kids didn't get taken away. And it happened to us, and we were the ones fighting. And we need everybody in this state to grab a petition and get signatures, because no family deserves to be torn apart over a non-toxic substance that a medical patient is using to treat an illness. This isn't something that was some hard drug in our house. This isn't something that was there that could hurt our children. This was something that was there because I am sick. Our children knew it was medicine. They knew to stay out of it just like any other drug. Any other cough medicine. They know not to use tobacco. They know not to use alcohol. They know not to use, any medication at all. They knew not to use mother's cannabis. They know that they're not an imminent danger. And so, with that...
I think we talked, you and I have talked a lot about imminent danger and what that means. And one of the things I thought was very interesting in this is that the children were removed from the home because they according to the report, they were in imminent danger. Okay. Well, we could argue whether they were or weren't. But here's the thing, is that the first child, for those of you who don't know, there was one child that accused Lindsay's son of giving them a marijuana something to eat.
I don't even think it's that clear, at least not
it's
that I've
not.
heard in the media.
It's not.
It's some child came to school and apparently consumed marijuana, but they haven't confirmed it.
Right, an unknown substance, an unknown substance that they assumed was marijuana. But my point is that, okay, so then there was a little investigation. They went to the house and they removed the children. But okay, so the children in Lindsay's house were in imminent danger where the medicine is, but they didn't ingest it. The child did, supposedly. However, they didn't feel that this was serious enough to go and have the child's stomach pumped or take them to the hospital. He was treated by the school nurse, and that's about the extent of it.
So let's summarize it a little bit for our listeners who may not have been following the case so far. This kid comes to school, goes to the school nurse, reports feeling ill.
Right.
They decide that he has consumed marijuana, but by all accounts, it seems that the child did not go to a doctor or a hospital.
No.
The school then called CPS and the proper authorities, and the investigation went from there.
Right.
But as far as we're all aware, that child, that was it. The child reported it. Oh, that's dangerous. Let's go find the source. But nothing was done for this child that we're aware of.
Right. So there was no confirmation that it was marijuana. The child was not drug tested or blood tested, and they clearly didn't think that he was in critical condition to where he would need more medical attention. And to me, that kind of it's a little bit of a hypocrisy. Or
it's illustrative of how they actually perceive the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like
arm off. That's imminent danger. You'd rush him to the ER.
Right.
That's
exactly.
imminent danger.
That's imminent danger.
Is it imminent danger that he needed a Band-Aid, for instance? Well,
right.
No, that's normal, And I'm not saying that it's normal for a kid to consume marijuana, but for a kid to consume something and you not know what he consumed,
right?
That is
Wouldn't
normal.
Wouldn't you want to find out what that was if he was in imminent danger? If he consumed this horrible substance, wouldn't you want to know?
And let's be clear though. Now, if a child goes to school. And I'm thinking about this from a parent's perspective. If my child goes to school, goes to the nurse, says that he's feeling horrible, that he ate something that was drugs that somebody else gave him, I would have like a wide spectrum of concerns, like, well, was it a pill? Was it heroin? Was it marijuana?
Was it laced with a lot of nutmeg?
Over the counter? Was it something? Yeah, right. Drano. I mean, there's
who knows?
Like, who knows what they took?
Right.
If an 11-year-old child comes to you and says they ingested something, you need to find out what that is.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Oh. Exactly. That's my thing is that the child that ingested it, they didn't do much more than send him to the nurse's office.
So here's my gut feeling on this, and I would just say don't confirm or deny if you guys happen to talk privately, because I don't want to, put her case in jeopardy or anything. But my gut feeling is that it was probably some sort of edible food. And he says, oh, I ate a cookie. And they say, oh, I bet it had pot in it. That's why you're sick. You know what I mean?
Who knows? Like, who knows? And I don't think that there's been any confirmation as to whether or not Lindsay's child did give him a medicated anything. I doubt that very much. But
I'm saying that I don't know if we've even decided what it was that he
right.
ate.
We haven't decided that, and we clearly didn't find that the child that actually ingested it was in imminent danger to require more medical attention. They just decided that removing the children that aren't ingesting it, that are in the home, are in imminent danger of possibly ingesting it. They never have before, but they might this one time because this kid did.
When my children were very, very, very little, I never did this, but on this one occasion, I had some Tylenol in a plastic bag in my purse because I had run out of some Tylenol. I needed some, and somebody else had given me some out of their bottle, so we didn't have two bottles, and I had them in a little plastic bag. At one point, I thought my kids had gotten into my purse, and I was unsure. And I took them to the ER because I didn't know if they ate them or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, as a parent, that's
imminent danger.
Right. And we went to the hospital and they gave them charcoal. We don't think either one of them actually did consume it, but I was afraid that they did. And I mean, those do cause serious harm to young children. And it astonishes me that there wasn't something like that done if the perspective really is that this was a danger, a danger enough to take these children.
Right. Let's go ahead and listen to the next 5 minutes.
CPS is working with us to get the kids back home to us. We are getting visitation. The foster family is not the nightmare foster family that you always picture when you hear of foster care. They care about our children, and we know it. And so that's been it's offered a little bit of comfort to know that they're with people that seem to care about them. But we need our babies home. We really need our babies home. And nobody deserves this for being sick. Multiple sclerosis is a serious condition that is affected by thousands of people in our country. And it is also the disease that is most commonly recommended cannabis to treat because of the muscle spasms and because of all the research. In other countries, we could get something called Sativex, which is a spray that I could have sprayed into my mouth to help my muscle spasms and my pain. But because it has basic organic plant matter, it is not legal in our country for me to have, even though something like Marinol is available to cancer patients, which I will also note is not nearly as effective as the actual plant. Because there's nothing for me to have pharmacology-wise, except for if you look at the former pharmacopoeia where cannabis was listed, I am prepared to become ill. Again, some more. And there's really nothing I can do about it. If I want my kids back, I've got to cooperate completely. And so that's what we'll be doing. It's scary. But it was something that was an isolated incident due to something with our family. This was not due to Compassionate Idaho, other than if we've been targeted as activists, which we still are looking for and looking at to confirm. But again, I want to make sure that all of the Compassionate Idaho volunteers and all the people that have signed the petition aren't living in fear. This was something that came into our lives in a way we never expected. Using your freedom of speech is important. Using a petition to use your freedom of speech is even more important because that's your voice. You need to be registered to vote, sign the petition. If you don't want to see this happen to any more families in our state, if this angers you, that children are removed because of a non-toxic substance, join us. Because the more people that get less afraid, the better we're going to have it. We need people to stop being scared, and we need people to understand that taking children away from their parents because there is a patient that has cannabis in the home is far more detrimental than having cannabis in the home. Because having cannabis in the home is, the only detriment to that is that it's illegal. And that's how come my children are gone. And that's the most harmful part about cannabis, is that they can take your kids. And we are going to get ours back, and we are going to do everything we can to make sure that this doesn't happen to more families. But I am asking all of you for help. We have legal fees that are piling up very quickly, putting different lawyers on.
Lindsay talks a lot about, the symptoms that she has associated with the medications that she would take, the prescribed, legal prescribed drugs that she would take for her MS, and she has an aggressive form of MS, which is highly debilitating, and cannabis has done a lot for her. It's sad to see that this is her only option, but there's more from the press release. We're going to take a quick break. We'll listen to Sarah Caldwell and Russ's speech as well. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Iva Cunningham, and I've got Jennifer Alexander on the line.
Buzz like me, I've been this way a million times before. Now are you buzzed? Are you going down? There's no turning back now, baby. Are you going down? There's no turning back now, baby. Were you buzzed last night? You sure seemed that way to me. Were you
buzzed? Is medical marijuana right for you? When you are stricken by an illness, injury, or disability, you deserve to live your life as free from pain and suffering as possible. Modern medical researchers have developed some amazing pharmaceutical drugs, but these may not be the best solution for you. At Alternative Medical Choices, we help collect your medical records history and provide a physician's review and examination to help you qualify for the use of medical marijuana in Oregon and Washington State. Call 971-270-0262 or visit altmedchoices.com for more information and to schedule an appointment today. Alternative Medical Choices, because you deserve the best in healthcare.
What in the hell? I know that's not Kenny Estes. Why they messing with him again, man?
Oakland police cars here on the scene where one of the raids took place earlier today. We're trying to find out exactly what Oakland police officers are doing here right now.
Leave him alone.
Federal authorities, as you mentioned, are being tight-lipped about what they were doing during several raids this morning.
He's in a wheelchair. He's in a motherfucking wheelchair, man.
6 o'clock this morning and broke through the back door of this building.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Stop fucking with Ken, man.
Jennifer, go ahead.
I'm Jennifer, here with Iva. So I wanted to comment a little bit about on the little segment we just watched with Lindsay, and I worked as the campaign manager for the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act here in Oregon a couple of years back, when it was first circulating the signatures, and a lot of people didn't want to put their name on a list. They feared standing up and saying, I support this. And I always kind of laughed about it a little bit, and I said, well, it's okay to support this. That's not necessarily saying I have pot. But the problem is most of them do.
Right.
And they're afraid if they say, I support this, that somebody will want to check them with the hopes that they find pot. It allows this political maneuvering to take place where you can be sort of stifled. Right. And I think Lindsay hit on that exact same kind of position when she said, the petition, it's your voice, it's your chance to say this. And I think the reality is that a lot of people are afraid of being exactly where she's at, and that's so unfortunate that that's how this topic doesn't progress. And then the other thing is the comment that she made about taking a child being more harmful than the cannabis in the house. And I don't think even the worst prohibitionist would argue with that separating this child from a parent who's otherwise loving.
There are a lot of reports that back up just that it's more harmful to remove the child from their biological family, even if there is drug abuse in the home. It causes more stress this situation. Sarah Caldwell has a comment. If you have this queued up, I think this is a comment that illustrates just what you're talking about.
Fought for 2.5 years to get medical marijuana laws in this. Never happens.
If you feel like you can help,
we're trying to find that right now.
It's just absolutely wonderful. I did get my children back in their home. The first night they slept with me in the same room. I caught my son packing his toys in grocery bags. I asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm getting my things together in case the police make me leave again." I don't think any child should have that fear ever. They should not experience being taken from their parents, especially under something that is so non-toxic. I may have my children back, and Lindsay and Josh don't have their children back. Lindsay and Josh's children, I love them just as much as I love my own. I'm going to keep going with this petition.
There you go. He's packing and preparing for the next thing. If that doesn't say PTSD, I don't know what else does.
Well, and I was going to say, I think back to when you were a kid, and you went and spent the night with a friend or you went to your grandma's or a cousin that there's always that excitement about it being away from home, but that's because everybody's supportive of it. And when you're gone, it's like you're like 2 hours into the visit and you're like, no, I want to go home. I want to see my mom. I want to see my dad. I want to see my dog. Right. I want to lay in my bed. I want to play with my toys. And that's when everybody's supportive and there's this encouragement. There's already that separation anxiety.
Right.
Now you take a kid out of the home when mom's crying, dad's crying, you've left all their stuff behind. They don't know if they're ever coming back.
Right.
What worse trauma could a child experience? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this should never happen.
Right.
There are cases of even, drug use or abuse that result in actual neglect and potential harm to the child. And it's that neglected harm that results in them stepping in.
Well, you know what, though, Jennifer? I have to say that I have to break in here because I think that the Child Protective Services has needed an overhaul, a national overhaul for a long time. Unfortunately, for every child like this that gets removed from a home for something as far as I'm concerned as silly as this, there's another child that gets placed back into an abusive home and dies. So I
pulled some statistics today looking into this because I've looked at this issue before. I was a mother of 4 children and somebody who feels passionately about these issues. I've looked at this issue from a few different angles,
Sure.
But one of the statistics that I had recalled, and I had to go look it up, is that there was a huge number of children in the foster care system directly correlated with substance abuse. Now, most of us, when we think foster care, we think abuse and neglect.
Right.
Like physical abuse, sexual abuse.
And neglect, no food, no attention, no supervision, that kind of thing.
Right. Physical harm to the child or very immediate physical harm foreseeable,
Right.
And when I'm looking up these statistics, 75% of all placements in out-of-home care are a result that they include the factor of substance abuse. 75%.
That's a huge number. 75%
you would
of the
presume
children.
that some of them are other things, but I refuse to believe that the only children in our country that are mistreated are substance abusers, because I know there are plenty of people that have fanatical views or, strict abhorrences to, and I there's clearly, this
Well, I think
excuse of drug use without the harm being there.
Right. Well, and here's the thing: is that there are a lot of people who are addicted to drugs. Harsh drugs, whatever, but alcohol, etc., prescription drugs, on and on and on. But is that the best use of CPS's time? When I think about a child, when I think about their caseload, they're overwhelmed. They have a lot of cases, and to me, it seems like, why aren't we looking at their caseload and looking at it from an objective point of view and saying, okay, if this is a child who is truly neglected, the parent is neglecting the child, he's not fed, he's not attention, there's no love, there might be physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, that sort of thing, then let's deal with that.
Right.
And if the parent just happens to have an illegal or a substance abuse that has to do with an illegal substance, why aren't we dealing with that as a health issue as opposed to just jerking those kids out of there? Because at that point, the whole family
needs it's not even just as a health issue. It's dealing with the whole situation holistically.
Well, right.
If this parent and this child are both in a bad relationship because of this parent's substance abuse, providing that parent assistance with the substance abuse, with parental skills, with responsibility, maybe mentorship, all of these things could take place in the home.
I guess my point is that just because somebody uses an illegal substance or any substance for that matter does not necessarily mean the child is in an imminent danger and needs to be removed from the home, or that person is neglecting their child. That's my point. And I think And listening to Sarah Caldwell talk about how her child and his stress from resulting from the situation is the real tragedy here, because it didn't need to go to this point. It was senseless, and the child that was really in imminent danger, they didn't do squat about. So.
Right.
So they inflicted more harm.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that if they really did have the resources to deal with something like this, or really did feel that something like this was of a concern, I don't think that the first option in their toolbox should be seizing a child from their home. Their first options should be trying to handle the situation at home, trying to help.
Right. And this just isn't the way to do that. I mean, it just isn't. I don't understand it. The thing that Lindsay made this quote, she said, for 2 years we fought hard to change the laws, only to become a victim of the laws. But before we run out of time, I want you to listen to what Russ's a part of the speech or part of the conference was too.
Is reason enough to break up a home? And the reason I say shame on Idaho is because Crohn's disease in England, he couldn't get any decent medicine. He comes to America, he partakes of medical marijuana in Oregon, he's able to put weight back on. This is a medicine that is helping plenty of people. And because of that, I have driven 7 hours across Oregon to say one thing to the state of Idaho. Shame on you! Yeah. Shame on you, Idaho! Hell yeah. These people are expressing their First Amendment right to petition their government for a redress of grievances, and the Boise Police Department thinks that's harmful to their children. Those folks could have had a case of Crown Royal sitting on the table. They could have had loaded weapons in their closet. They could have had, well, they do have pit bulls. These kind of things nobody would ever consider being child endangerment, but the mere presence of a non-toxic piece of dead vegetable matter is reason enough to break up a home. And the reason I say shame on Idaho is because you in the state of Idaho don't agree with this either. In 2011, the Boise State University public policy polling found that 74% of Idahoans believe that people with serious medical conditions should be left alone and allowed to legally use cannabis medicine. That's 3 out of 4 Idahoans. But in this building, a majority of the legislature says no marijuana legalization, not even if you have multiple sclerosis, not even if your skin's on fire, not even if the trembling and spasticity keeps you awake at night, not even if this puts you in such a deleterious state you can't even be a mother to your children. Hell no, we're not going to support it. And Idaho, I don't believe you feel that way. Do you think this woman should be put in a cage? No! Do you think her children should be taken away from her? No! That's hell no. Hell no. Now, we can change this in Idaho. And I know that there's people in Idaho that are afraid. They see Oregon and Washington. They see pot parties and rallies, and they worry about the quality of life in Idaho. I understand that. But please understand that the medical marijuana that is being promised here for the state of Idaho is very responsible, very restricted, and would ensure that only the sickest and most disabled Idahoans would be able to take advantage of this medicine and nobody else. Nobody's talking about setting up bong shops on State Street. Nobody's talking about having massive pot parties on the lawns. We're talking about a mom who just wants to be able to raise her kids. The thing that really blew my mind before I came out here, I do the news for 420radio.org. We are a 24-hour cannabis community radio station. We're on 5 days a week. So I cover news stories on marijuana every day. And I saw this story come from Middleton, Idaho on last Tuesday. A mom left her 3-year-old and her 10-month-old in the car while she went back inside to grab something. Also in the car was a loaded .45. The 3-year-old got a hold of the loaded .45 and shot the 10-month-old. Grazed the cheek. The kids are fine. But did that mother lose her children for child endangerment? No. Somehow, keeping a loaded .45 in your car with your kids alone is merely an accident. But keeping your medicine in your closet locked up, that's child endangerment? That makes no sense. And this is not limited to Idaho. Just last week, I collected 5 stories of children aged 4 and younger who managed to get their hands on a loaded weapon and either shot themselves.
I think that, knowing that statistic, 5 kids, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're listening to A Different View. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a joke with no lie, you fire, baby. Pull up, and back up that bumper. Give it to me proper.
All right, guys, here we go. We got the top 6 answers on the board. Name something that gets passed around. Chris.
A joint.
A joint?
This is Normal Show Live, where a joint is always the right answer.
Now, Chris, I don't know what 100 people you thought we were talking to at some nice little mall across good old America, but I'm pretty sure the people didn't tell the survey people, hey, an illegal drug. Let's turn around and see how many weed heads are out there with Chris. A joint.
Fun.
Oh, hello. I'm Big Daddy, and I want you to join me at the Funky Roller Ring. We're partying hard over here, baby. So stop on by, check out the funky grooves, and shake your booty too.
Don't get in too deep, brother. Don't get in too heavy. Don't get so you can move about whenever.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer here with Iva. Hello. So in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the pushback against legalization. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to get the exact text of the bill. I'm hoping to pull it up here soon. But in Washington, apparently very quietly, with not a lot of to-do, they passed a bill through both the House and the Senate that would repeal certain portions of the Washington legalization bill. And the issue was that they felt that the way that it was worded could impede the enforcement of the what remained illegal, for instance, home cultivation. And the problem was that they had defined hemp as any marijuana less than 0.3% THC, which you wouldn't think would make any difference, except if you realize that cops have completely been able to take, wild hemp growing on the side of the road and call it marijuana without having to prove that it was, in fact, any different.
Right.
This line drawing will impact enforcement. It absolutely will. What I had never considered until I saw this article, though, and I thought it was actually rather clever, was that by defining the plants as hemp up to, this 0.3%, and understanding the biology of how the plants grow, the psychoactive THC doesn't start to really accumulate until well into flowering. So you could grow trees and trees of marijuana, and until you flip them into a flowering cycle, or if they're outside, it hits that season, it would be hemp, and it would be perfectly legal under Washington law, even though they didn't approve home cultivation. So what happened was that by the wording of the law, you ended up having this very short harvest interval where cops could say, yeah, that's pot. Any other time of the year, it was just hemp. So I see the problem, but I don't know exactly what the solution was, and I want to see what the solution is. I think that if they did it the way that I think that they did, that it complicates the hemp benefits of this bill, which were a motivation for at least some people in passing it. So Russ had mentioned in the chat to us that he had reported on this. Russ, do you understand how they defined the difference?
Yeah, what's going on here is that at 0.3% THC, Delta 9 THC, that, like you said, would be a qualification that even some plants in flower could achieve, because the Delta 9 THC doesn't actually form until the THC acids are combusted or vaporized, and then they change into Delta 9 THC. So they are even saying some flowering plants would come under the 0.3% THC. So the redefinition now is that it's a combination of 0.3% Delta 9 THC or THC acid, which is the precursor to becoming Delta 9 THC once you vaporize or smoke it.
So under that argument, would they still be able to grow hemp strains?
Apparently so, because because hemp strains wouldn't contain the THC acid.
Gotcha. So, and that's what I was wondering, and I'm trying to find the exact wording to see how they've solved this problem, because I imagine we'll be seeing things like this again as states are considering it. I know here in Oregon, a lot of people are really looking forward to hemp legalization, which we technically have, but not practically until we do something about the cannabis legalization for recreational use. And it appears that, Colorado's kind of getting wind of the same sort of a thing, although I think it's largely bluster in Colorado. I think that it's mostly the oppositional, Calvina Faye, Save Our Society, Smart Colorado group that developed there. They really focused on Colorado during the election, and their thing was PR and media attention. And I think they believe if they say it loud enough, they will get enough people to believe that it's true that they can actually shift public opinion. And I think that that's really what we're seeing in Colorado, is that there's been some whispers about efforts to repeal Colorado's bill, and most everybody there is saying it's not happening. But there's a lot of whispers happening where they're really trying to say this is going on, even though it's like one senator may have looked at their language.
Well, it looks like recently Colorado House gave the initial approval for the marijuana taxes, and it looks like they've agreed, 15% excise tax and an initial 10% special tax on recreational marijuana over, and Republicans, actually, interestingly enough, said their tax rate was too high.
Yeah, they're definitely looking at that. That's in this article I'm looking at now. I'll post this on our Facebook page. They're saying since the tax is so high, some lawmakers are suggesting that the question proposed to voters regarding the tax include an option to repeal the law altogether. And that sounds like it would be like 3 options on the ballot. But,
yeah, really.
But it says it wouldn't apply to medical marijuana, but it would affect the, tourism industry that's
Mm-hmm.
beginning to emerge. And I think ultimately Colorado is going to plow forward with this, even if it comes back that it's going to be a ridiculously high tax. I think Colorado will be like, okay. They've kind of been doing that with medical already. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of the states wouldn't be okay with that perspective, but Colorado seemed to largely tolerate it.
Well, I think the thing about Colorado that a lot of the other states don't quite have yet is that the Coloradoans really like the bill. They actually have, and I think a lot of the activists there have paid a great deal of respect for the intent of the law, and that's given them a good public perception, which is always help in pushing things forward. Being on your best behavior while you're being given a few rights back, and I think that because of that public approval, it's made it easier to push things through in Colorado. Washington will be a little bit more interesting to see how that all flows, but I think I agree with you, Jennifer. I think they're going to go, okay, whatever. As long as we've got legalization, we've got to start somewhere.
I really think that there is definitely some effort in Colorado to oppose it. Of course, that's true in every state. There's never going to be 100% support,
Sure.
But I don't think that the support in Colorado is going to be high enough. I think they're already seeing the benefits of it.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of fluster and pushback, as it's being implemented. Going, see, we told you. Oh, okay, never mind. See, we told you, and it'll just keep progressing, I think.
Right.
But Washington, I think that there's a lot of expectation in Washington for there to be some pushback on different aspects of it. So,
I do too.
We'll see how it plays out.
Well, and as I talk to people in Washington, there's still, because they don't have home grow there's still a lot of people very much interested in becoming patients just for that one benefit.
Well, and it sort of fuels the negatives of prohibition, by not having that option for home cultivation. You're going to have that happen. It's just
sure. Well, it's
quo.
one thing that I really didn't even think about. You know what I mean? And again, this is because I come from the perspective of, I try to grow, I suck at it. I like the convenience of being able to go and have a selection of stuff, knowing that stuff has been somebody's taken a great deal of care and it's been tested for impurities and things like that. I don't have to do any of that nonsense. I don't have to make sure it's flushed. I don't have to pay the high bill and worry about mites and so on and so forth. I can just go and pick from a buffet of different strains.
Right, whatever, and you could try a little bit of each.
Right, and I love that. So I guess I take it from that perspective. So for me personally, growing isn't that big of a deal. But for certain individuals, going to buy a large quantity because you need a large quantity for medicine or for other, for juicing or for what have you, it doesn't make economic sense to always go to the dispensaries to obtain your medicine. It makes more sense to grow. So from that perspective, I can understand that. But, I didn't even, I guess I figured everybody would be like, yeah, let's go to the dispensaries because that makes sense. But to me.
And I think there's both sides of that. And I think that was the thing that I realized the most when I first got into, political discussions like this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people don't realize, you can have people right on all sides of a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that want to go somewhere and buy it, they have that right. And people that want to sit at home and grow it, they should have that right. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be forced to purchase it if you want to have it, and you shouldn't be forced to cultivate it yourself if you don't want to deal with
right.
There is, different perspectives, different ways of looking at this, and I think that all of them have their validity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also the other interesting thing is that people are still challenging the DUI. What is it? 5 nanograms. Sorry.
5 nanograms.
Yeah, I was going to say milligrams. I knew that wasn't right.
Well, maybe for you.
Well, I do consume a lot. Anyway, people are still challenging that, and the conversation that I always have is look, we have to have some sort of precedence to challenge it. We have to start somewhere. And, and I think both of these laws, both in, Washington and Colorado are start somewhere.
Well, and I think that the reality of ending such a hugely ongoing failure as prohibition, the the reality is that, you know, we're going to be like, okay, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but wait, what about, and oh, but wait, you know, you're going to develop this process. It's not going to happen overnight. When alcohol prohibition ended, they simply allowed for, I believe it was 2% beer, which is less than, like, what I think we call that near beer. I don't know. You know, it's a very low alcohol content. It's not near beer. It actually qualifies, but it's like the lowest kind of beer you could get today. And that was all that was legal. That was it. You know, the higher content alcohol wasn't.
Right.
But as soon as that first step was taken, things progressed and they developed, and each state sort of identified how they wanted to regulate it. They took it upon themselves, and this is where we're going.
Right.
I think that if these little, you know, stumbling
nuances,
blocks, we're going to get right past them.
I think so too, and I think there's a lot more people after legalization that are willing to cooperate with it because they recognize that it's not ideal. Nobody's saying that, but it's a place to start. And with every push that we get back, we continue to keep marching forward and asking for more. And I think eventually we are going to get what we want. We are going to get full legalization at the federal level. You know, it will be defined by the states. But I do see that coming in the next, 10 years or less. I can't see.
I'm with or less.
Or less. I just can't see this continuing on any much longer because it really, 2 states have legalized. It's creating a conflict with the federal government and the states. That's not a position that the government wants to be in.
Right. And I think really when we see something like what's going on in Washington right now, if the only thing that they're doing is fixing that little thing, I think that's the right evolution of the conversation. Now, when I-502 went in, it wasn't meant to allow for home cultivation, and that would have provided a loophole that could have let you right through. I mean, like that was a loophole. But I think that if they're being reasonable enough to only address these loopholes and not to further restrict the law, I think that's the right evolution, because that's respecting where the voters wanted to go with this, and once we go this far, we can go a little further.
Right.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Global Cannabis March going on this weekend.
Album number quattro, and still is gospel, and art that we impart with each bar, far from docile. It's not so unbelievable or inconceivable that we'll succeed in goals will be achieved in full. Ain't nothing changed but the date and time, making rhymes and beats, and now we can't stop when someone cut our break lines. We think alike with great minds to combine our efforts.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for NORML, and if you're one of the 26 million Americans who smoked marijuana last year, you need to get involved in the drive to legalize marijuana. We need your help to stop the senseless arrest of more than 800,000 Americans each year on marijuana charges. Together, we can end marijuana prohibition and stop the arrests of marijuana smokers. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at NORML.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORML.
Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now. Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now, keep it hot. Push 'em up now. How about we drop to the rhythm? It's a well-known game. One like you want with the fat campaign, champagne. I don't even want it, I'm a bush light main. Check it out while I saddle up and entertain. For the next couple minutes I'ma abstain from any deep stress that's weighing on my brain. Well, I'm at it, yo, well I might as well drain another cocktail, just let me explain. How much you believe in anything we call game? If I'm moving slow, well you oughta switch lane. Better breathe deep, cause it might be pain. Comes with the fact that.
And now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer here with Iva on A Different View. So we're going to spend a little bit of time we started off the show with, the problems with prohibition, just, ripping families apart. Talked a little bit about the efforts to sort of push back against legalization. This weekend is the cannabis community's chance to come out globally and stand up together and say it's time. And I think if there's ever a moment in time when, at 420 obviously, but 420 is more a party day. The Global Cannabis March has been going on for quite a few years now. I don't even know what year we're in. 1999 was the first one, so 14 2013. What's that?
I said we're 2013. You asked.
No, it's but it's like the 14th annual, and so this is the time, where we all get to stand up and say Colorado and Washington did the right thing, that the rest of us should follow behind. Yell it to your media, your legislatures, everybody. Make sure that they know that we're not going, no, this was a mistake. Everybody needs to come out. And in the recent years, numbers have been dwindling at these things. I mean, people are still coming out, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people are kind of getting laid back. Oh, we got medical or we got decrim. It's no big deal. Well, nobody goes to jail. Lindsay's family was just torn apart. People are still being hurt by this. Multiple other people have been locked up. People have lost their jobs, their homes, their medical care. The list goes on and on.
Well, marching in the global march is besides, introducing yourself to other activists, it's showing a presence. It's like we are large. There are a lot of voices here, and for all those people who can't get to a march, who can't march for physical handicaps or because of situations like what Lindsay is going through, show up and represent for those people. Show up and protest for those people, because not everyone can be there. When one of the comments that somebody made on Facebook about Lindsay, I don't know why they stay in that state. Why don't they just move away? That's not so easy to do, just to uproot your family and move away for a lot of different reasons. And for those people,
because you're being persecuted, why should you run?
Right.
Why shouldn't you stay and change the law?
Right.
Especially when most people agree with her.
Right, exactly. Why not stay and change the injustice in your own hometown? I mean, if we all went and moved to another state, what about those people that are there? What about all those victims that what about all those people that are victims of this?
Or like you just said, the people that can't stand up for themselves, So on this weekend, this Saturday, globally, so far it says 801 different cities have signed up. Since 801 different cities have signed up from 71 different nations since 1999. And this year we have 203 cities from 40 different nations.
Wow.
So it's not just like, oh, we've got a buddy in Canada that's going to be standing well. No, this is a global event. This is a global uprising saying end prohibition. And we also have
because this is a global war. I mean, unless it is a global war. The drug war affects all countries, not just not just here in this country, not just Mexico. We could go on and on and on about what's happening in Mexico as a direct result of the drug war. Other countries, Colombia, I mean, on and on and on. The drug war affects more than just the people in this country. We may lock up a heck of a lot more, but there's a lot of people in other countries who are suffering far more, being persecuted far more because of the drug war. So come out, show your support, become an activist or learn to become an activist at this march. Get hooked into what's going on in your community and lend a voice for those who can't stand up for themselves.
And I got to tell you, in the previous years that we've attended the march here in Portland, Oregon, I've been amazed at who's shown up. You've had moms with strollers, you've had people in wheelchairs, you've had people on crutches, and we march a pretty good distance here.
Right.
And I mean, really, just to see these people out on the street and see them overcoming odds to defend what's important, like I said, this whole issue, it really ultimately breaks down to your civil rights.
Right. And if I can see somebody in a wheelchair or walking with the cane as far as we walk here, then by golly, somebody who is an able-bodied, just a recreational smoker, get you off your couch and get out there and march beside those people, because they are marching for you. For themselves, show them some support.
I was going to say, and some people get confused. They think this march is about taxing or regulating or medical or whatever. This march is about ending prohibition. Period. That's what this march is about. Every year it's been going on. It's a global marijuana march. There's no medical. There's no hemp. It's everybody together.
It's not about picking sides or deciding who's more right or who's more ethical or what reasons that should be presented or what reasons people should be able to use cannabis. It's just that we need to end prohibition on cannabis. Period. And to also draw attention to the drug war.
I think the times vary, state to state, city to city, country to country. Obviously, you're going to be in different time zones.
Isn't there a link for all of them?
I just put a link on our Facebook page that you can find a march near you, no matter which country you're in, which city. It's all there, and it's updated regularly. So, and if you want to start a march in your area, you can always contact them and hopefully have time to get it ready this year. But if not, prepare for next year.
Right.
This is going to be something, you got to stand up and say this is important.
Well, and if you can't march, you can always write. You can email. You can call. You can get involved in politics in a whole other way. You can get involved in politics from sitting on your couch behind your computer.
Absolutely.
There's a million different ways. So if you can't march, send off an email, send off a letter, pen a letter, make a phone call.
But I encourage everybody to share this link, because your friends can march or their friends can, and things get spread around. This is the kind of thing that we want to see people come out for. We want to see people stand up and say, this must end now. If the politicians see that, it changes things.
Right. That's exactly right. When they see the volume of people, they see all that sea of faces, then they start to recognize that this is a movement that they can't ignore anymore.
And I think it's really, really, really meaningful if they see people coming out, and not just Colorado and Washington, who have already done it, who are probably going to be really enjoying this year's global marijuana march.
I bet they are.
But even in those states that did not make that decision this year, to see them rally, to see them all come together and say, yeah, like that.
Right.
Why can't we do that here? And so this is the year I think it's the most impacting for people to come out. So if you've never made it before, this is the year to start. Be there this year, because that's what the politicians need to be seeing right now, a reinforcing message saying that there are an abundance of people that do not regret these decisions.
Well, and if you're living in a place and you think you're alone in your thoughts about about prohibition of cannabis or the drug war, this is an opportunity. I'm telling you, you will feel solidarity. You feel the desire to get involved, and you see and hear stories of the injustice, and and it's a really good bonding experience for people who just don't know where to start, don't know what to do. This is a great way to get influenced in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
It's how I got started.
I'm sorry?
It's how I got started 8 years ago.
Oh, how you got started? Yep.
I think it's how you got started too, Jennifer, isn't it?
Pretty close, yes. It was very
safe.
close.
It's safe to come out and just march and and protest the prohibition. It's a safe place to start.
I think what most people learn from the minute that they've stepped into the cannabis world, no matter how they get there, is that there's such a variety of people, such diversity. Everything you thought you knew was wrong.
Right.
Really, that's what you find out. You end up standing next to like a Republican grandpa and like a stoner kid, and you find out that y'all got a lot more in common than you thought you did.
Well, my perceptions never cease to be challenged. Never cease to be challenged. I'm always, people are always, surprising me with things I hadn't thought about, things that,
Exactly.
my own perceptions and stereotypes that are built into my head. So it's nice and refreshing to be challenged once in a while.
Yep. New perspective. I always like that.
That's right.
So we'll be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. here at 420radio.org. And we are on Facebook, A Different View.
Yes.
I had to think about that one for a minute.
We are on Facebook.
And then on Twitter, ADV420. And then if you guys want to message us, you can send us a message at differentview420@gmail.com and give us some show ideas or thoughts on topics. Or, I really think there's a lot of people in our community that might not want to be public but have issues or concerns. And I think that it'd be a great idea, if we talked about those in John Doe's and, you know what I mean? Like, these concerns that come up when you're a cannabis consumer in the not so progressive states.
True. All right, you're listening to A Different View. We'll be back next week. I'm Iva Cunningham and Jennifer Alexander. We'll see you next week on A Different View.
So there, Mr. DUI, who do you think you are? You breathe into a breathalyzer just to start your car. Instead of blowing out, you could have been sucking in. I bet you'd do things my way now if you had to do it over again. You'd like to smoke weed, and you'd like it a lot. Or you'd say, fuck liquor, I'd rather smoke pot. It don't make me hungover or act like an ass. You ought to give up drinking, start smoking grass. You ought to give up drinking, start smoking grass.